miracles can happen at any moment, at any time. They happen when people show up, put in the work, when they push harder, when they believe. At Lansing, belief fuels our drive, our precision, our promise to make each day better. We know our customers, not just orders, people with challenges, deadlines, and goals that become ours. These are the relationships that we build to last. The future won't be defined by one big win. It will be defined by 1,000 daily choices. At Lansing, great things don't just happen. We make them happen.
The future of baking doesn't just happen. It's built by the people who know it best. At AMF, we engineer smart solutions designed to tackle the toughest challenges in industrial baking. Through our specialized teams, we aim to deliver higher outputs and reduce downtime across your bakery's operations. Every AMF innovation empowers bakery teams to increase yield, reduce costs, and produce quality products at scale. This is the Lights Out Bakery. From mixer to marketplace, AMF is your baking partner of choice. Today, tomorrow, and beyond.
The Fusion Floor by Havco has no fear from forklifts, and we have the proof. If you need a composite floor to handle the high traffic of heavy forklifts, get the floor that's backed by a 20-year industry-wide record of use. Fusion Floor by Havco, the only proven composite floor.
Mi nombre es Mónica, soy de Cali, Colombia, and I'm teaching 5th grade as a homeroom teacher. Teaching abroad was something that I had in my professional to-do list or wish list, and I believe that teaching in the U.S. with EPI is a great opportunity because it allows to experience and understand different cultures. Every year that I have new students, I learn something new, whether it's a fun fact from their lives or something that we discovered together from reading a history passage. It also gives us the chance to learn different methodologies and share ideas with other educators.
We are Costa Farms.
We're one of the largest growers in North America.
We brought dozens of new varieties to market.
From tried and true favorites like Raven Zizi to the hottest new hibiscus.
And we've changed how ornamental plants are sold in America by pioneering online sales.
We've also made moves to become more sustainable. This year, we recycled over 1,000 tons of plastic.
We're super proud of how far we've come.
I'm so proud that the Costa Farms name is synonymous with quality.
These little red trucks have seen a lot over the years. From a house on a hill in Richmond, Virginia, to over 40 locations across the country. VSC Fire and Security, founded and rooted in family, integrity, responsibility, and excellence. VSC continues to stand the test of time. We're raising a glass to our heritage and our mission as we look ahead to the future. We believe the best is yet to come. VSC, your world protected.
Every day asks us to carry a lot. We learn how to balance it all. The girl grip. Sometimes a bag says more than words. It can even ask for a rescue. Sometimes it's about carrying what matters most. Sometimes it's about privacy. And sometimes what you hold is the art. This is the art of the carry.
Just like we create a concrete product that has to be strong, it has to be able to hold up and different weather conditions, different loads, different situations. The people around there are just like the concrete. They're strong-minded, and they're willing to go the extra mile to be able to hold up in adverse conditions, to be able to go that long duration, and that has kept people just as myself there for a long duration of time to make sure that we're just like the concrete, that we're strong. That's how we've lasted 100 years, and that's how we intend on lasting another 100 years.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is absolutely wonderful to see you here for our 2026 reunion, the Markel Group annual meeting, or as we say, the reunion, we call it. Now, none of us actually came up with that name, reunion. We just heard you use the phrase pretty frequently. We do our best to listen and learn from others, hence the reunion became the crowdsourced name. So thank you very much for the idea. Thank you. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to share just a few thoughts, and then Matt Johnson will soon present our Markel Style Award winners to associates selected by their peers for our highest honor. Following the Style Awards, your senior management team, including our CEO of Insurance, Simon Wilson, our president of Markel Ventures, Andrew Crowley, and our CFO, Brian Costanzo, will join me on stage to present some financial highlights and opportunities. Then we'll be here to answer your questions. After your questions, we'll take about a 10-minute break to prepare for our formal AGM, which will be conducted by our chairman of the board, Steve Markel. During that break, feel free to either remain here for the formal AGM or join us outside at the reception for some hospitality in the form of food and drink and music. It'll be right out that way. Now, before we kick off the meeting, let me first welcome you all. I also want to take just a minute to thank some of the people that made today happen. A lot of work goes into preparing for the reunion, and I just want to take a minute to thank some of the people who led that effort. Unfortunately, time and space keep me from being able to thank everyone, but I do want to specifically thank a few, and as many as I can. First, I want to thank Tyler Brown. Tyler, I don't know if he'll be over there shortly. He's led the effort for the last 3 years in making this meeting special, and we would not be where we are today without his leadership in this effort. Tyler would be the first to say it's a team sport, and he's right. As such, I also want to thank Caroline Paul for her partnership with Tyler. Thank you. I'll have a couple names so we won't wear out your hands too much so fast. I'd also like to thank Cynthia Green, who leads events for our insurance business, for her joining this effort, as well as her teammates, Gretchen Nurnberger, who's succeeding Cynthia in that role, and Karen Mountain-Wellman. Thank you, ladies. I'd also like to thank a couple of all-around athletes, Cynthia Fetterman and Christina Matthijs, for their crucial contributions to anything and everything that comes up in All Matters Reunion. And finally, I'd like to thank Lynn Blevins, who captains the many Markel volunteers who shepherd us through all of the aspects of this meeting, from planning to helping us know where to find a bathroom, to bite to eat, or a place to park. Thank you all for the work you do for this. In 1986, when Markel went public, Alan Kirshner, along with Tony and Steve Markel, penned our company's creedal statement of values, the Markel Style. Those 214 words will forever be the philosophical and cultural linchpin of your company. The Markel Style establishes the foundation of how the company approaches its business and long-term decision-making. It guides how we allocate capital and serve all of our constituents. We are not perfect. We're human. But the Markel Style remains as a constant North Star. That's important because Markel Group today is more than 22,000 people. We're a decentralized system of exceptional leaders and teams operating market-leading businesses across an array of industries. We believe in autonomy and accountability. Our creed, as stated in the Markel Style, keeps all of us grounded in our common values and moving forward together as one team. In its own way, the Markel Style addresses the question, what is the purpose of a company? We believe it is to serve. We work every day to serve our customers, to serve our fellow associates, and to serve our shareholders forever and right now. First, the Markel Group serves its customers. We pay insurance claims for storm damage, ocean shipping losses, professional liability claims, and other complex specialized risks. We also provide essential products and services such as bakery equipment, precast concrete structures, and concierge medical services, just to name a few. We do so day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Serving our customers dependably and reliably over time both fulfills our purpose and builds value. There are no shortcuts. There is no finish line. The journey is the destination. Second, the Markel Group serves its associates by emphasizing culture, autonomy, decentralized decision-making, respect for expertise, and opportunities to build long-term careers. We want associates to come here and stay. We want them to tell their family, friends, and their personal networks to join us as well. We seek to create a home that attracts people with equal parts of talent and integrity. We cherish the relationships that we build throughout your company. Third, the Markel Group serves its shareholders by focusing on building the long-term value of each share you own. We want shareholders to relentlessly compound their savings and build wealth, and we have a long-term record of doing so. From 1986 to the present, our stock price compounded at roughly 15%. That compounding record puts us in the upper tiers of public companies, and it's been true for decades, not just the last few minutes. That compounding has put kids through college. It's funded retirements. It's created the ability to give and contribute to communities and create good. Now, personally, I grew up in the shadows of Philadelphia, the center of Quakerism in the US. As the old joke around Philly says, the Quakers came to America to do good, and they did well. So is Markel. I want to thank you as fellow shareholders for helping us continue this path, which does so much good for so many. Well, that all speaks to why we exist. In a few moments, Simon and Andrew and I will tackle the question, how are we doing? And we'll review some specific financial measurement to describe that part of the answer. We'll also talk a bit about our future and the opportunities we see. As is always the case, I think it's important to remember that the numbers are the output. The input is the Markel Style and our system. Living our values, serving each of you each and every day is how the magic happens. That is the system and the process which underlies our financial performance. We run Markel with the mindset of a good farmer. A good farmer farms for the next generation, not just the current crop. We're building your company for forever and right now. I'm grateful for the chance to help build Markel. It's a joy to do so. We're going to build this forever, and I thank you. Now, before I turn over things to Matt Johnson, give me just a minute to say a word or two about Matt. There's so much to say about Matt that I'm going to limit myself just to words that begin with the letter C. So first off, there we go, I've got a picture of Matt getting ready, Mr. Backstage. First C, creative. Matt is creative in every possible way. He sees into the future and imagines possibilities ahead of the rest of us. Connector. He connects people and ideas all around the Markel Group. He's done so throughout our insurance and ventures businesses, and he's done so all around the world. COVID. Matt played a critical role during the times of change and reconfiguration driven by COVID. He helped so many of us figure out how to operate in a different way and to be able to continue to productively go about our work. Consultants. Recently, Matt stepped back just a bit from his nonstop pace as a full-time associate of Markel and took on the role of consultant to remain connected and to continue to help us craft and tell the story of Markel. I'm so grateful for all that Matt has done over so many years, and I look forward to continuing to maintain that relationship in the years to come. With that, please welcome Matt Johnson to the stage and enjoy this video about this year's Markel Style winners.
We've long said we're here to build one of the world's great companies. But what does that mean? You could scour annual reports, case studies, and books about companies that come before, and if you did, you would probably learn things about what other organizations have done to succeed in the long term. But what's interesting is you'll find that success is not really as much about the products those companies sell. It's about the people that drive those companies and the relationships they form. It's about the spirit of the organization and the ambition that lies deep within their hearts, a commitment to try and make each day better than the last. These are the companies that succeed, and that's why if you look at what makes a great company, you'll find that a great company is more about who you are than what you do. And so the question is for us, who are we? 214 words that reinforce our commitment to success. 214 words that help us remain honest and fair in all our dealings. 214 words that we call the Markel Style.
All right, how's everybody doing today? They didn't tell me they were going to do that, and so I feel like it's payback for all the times I put these Style Award winners' face on the Jumbotron. So thank you very much, Tom. That means quite a lot. It is my honor to present to you this year's winners of the Markel Style Award. Every year we give this award to people who embody the values of the Markel Style with their actions and not just their words. Our winners were selected from the more than 22,000 people who are part of our family of companies. And we think it's important to celebrate them because they represent the best of who we are and what we can be. So as I read through the names of this year's winners, I'll stop along the way to tell a few stories to illustrate the caliber and character of these individuals. So, are you ready to meet the winners of the Markel Style Award? All right then, let's do it. Zach Beigel, Kate Gardner, Ruben Oviedo, Stacy Prigmore, Alicia Ferbert-Adams, and Jamie Siki. Now, over 20 years ago, Jamie worked at a daycare that shared a parking lot with Markel. And she'd been in that job for about 8 years, and she was looking for more opportunity in her career. And it just so happened that one of the parents at the daycare was a woman named Kimberly LaFortune. Is Kimberly here today, by the way? Where's Kimberly? The astute among you will recognize that name because Kimberly won a Style Award last year. And she was so impressed with Jamie at the daycare that she started printing out open job positions to encourage Jamie to apply. Jamie eventually did, and she got a job in the file room in 2005. She's been promoted multiple times since, and she now leads a team of underwriting support specialists. The spirit of teamwork. Jess Richardson, Keith Hill, Claire Willett, Nick Gibson, Matt Scott, and Jeanette Anselmo. All right, there we go. And you haven't even heard her story yet. So Jeanette went into healthcare to follow in the footsteps of her grandmother. And when she got out of college, she went to work for an anesthesia practice. And she really came to like that company and culture. But a few years later, that company was acquired by a private equity firm. And there were layoffs and leadership changes and restructures, and the company eventually became a shell of what it once was. And as this was happening, Jeanette was actually getting her MBA. And it was a professor in that program who connected her with what would become her dream job. She got the opportunity to lead a small concierge medical practice in Charlotte, North Carolina called Signature Healthcare. And for the next 15 years, she and the team built that to be an incredible organization. But then Jeanette got a call last year that she didn't necessarily want to receive. She heard from the owners of Signature that they were considering a sale to a company called Partner MD, which was part of a large global corporation called Markel Group. And Jeanette feared the worst. She feared that a deal like this could kill the culture that she and the team had worked so hard to create over all those years. But it really wasn't her decision to make. So Jeanette took a meeting with Zach Smith, who's CEO of Partner MD, and Zach said all of the right things. And at the end of the meeting, he promised her that Partner MD would take care of what she and the team had built at Signature. So despite her apprehensions, Jeanette moved mountains to make that deal a success. And she did not lose a single person through that transaction. So you can look at this and say Zach and Partner MD kept their promise, and Jeanette, you kept your promise too. And both organizations are stronger for it. The spirit of teamwork. Alan Pittelkow, Nikolai Stoikov, Nate Wells, Jock Moreau, Billy Mosby, and Isaac Dunstan. Last but not least, Isaac. Now, Isaac was working as a server in various restaurants after he graduated from high school. And he did that for a few years until a family friend who worked at Markel told him that he might want to apply for a job with the customer service team. And so Isaac did, and he got a job in a call center, despite the fact that he actually didn't really like talking on the phone at the time. But he stuck it out with that job, and he eventually led a team in that call center, and now he's an underwriter in our personal lines business. And we love a story like this, because one of the pillars of the Markel style, as Tom said, is the idea that when you join one of our companies, you join a place where you can reach your full potential. But really, when you want to know what Isaac's all about, there's so much more than that story. And for that, we need to go back to 2018. Because Isaac, he lives in Waukesha County, which is right outside Milwaukee there, and he was alarmed to see that more and more people were struggling financially. And he wanted to help out, but he only had about $200 to give, and he couldn't even find an organization that was providing financial support to people in need. So Isaac decided to do something about it. He started his own nonprofit, and he called it Simply Helping People. And it was based on the relatively simple premise that you could pair generous donors with neighbors in need. And that's what y'all have been doing since 2018. And I have to tell you just a few stories about the work they've done. So the woman in the top left there was going through cancer treatment. She needed help covering expenses. Simply Helping People provided a grant. The family you see in the top right had a kitchen fire, and they needed help getting back on their feet. And Simply Helping People provided a grant. And then the car you see was a neighbor who hit a deer, and they only had liability coverage and couldn't fund the repairs. Simply Helping People provided a grant. And then the last story, the woman in the lower right there, and this is a uniquely Wisconsin story, her car was hit by a snowplow. And luckily she's okay, but the car was not. And she needed some help covering the expenses, and so Isaac's organization provided a grant. Then a year later, Isaac gets a phone call. It's that same woman. And she says, "Hey, Isaac, how you doing?" He says, "Good." And she says, "Are you still doing that nonprofit thing?" He says, "Yeah." She says, "Well, I've been saving for the last year, and I'd like to pay that money back." And that's what she did. And as Isaac is telling me these stories, and there's many more like them, I became immensely grateful that people like Isaac exist, because they show us what's most important in life: simply helping people. That's what the spirit of teamwork is all about, and that's what these people do every single day. So please join me in congratulating this year's winners of the Markel Style Award.
Hello, hello, hello. At this point, we've got some updates with some slides, and Andrew and Simon and I will go through a few things to give you an update on some of the financial performance that's been going on here for the last 15 years we're going to talk about. Brian's here to answer any tough questions that none of us are prepared to do, and we might just call on him anyway, no matter what. First off, here is the disclosure statement that happens at the front of any financial presentation or conference call. I call it the SEC equivalent of the Miranda warning. So anything we say can and will be used against us, but please don't do that. And we're giving you the forward-looking disclosures to try to make sure that we don't. We had a contest where we were going to offer somebody the chance to read this to everybody. Nobody chose to participate, so you'll just have to read it for yourself. We'll go into some of the slides. The first one, and one of my colleagues noted, gosh, this is a busy slide. And boy, there's a lot of stuff up there. And he kind of wondered when I started on this, how much time are you going to spend talking about this? So in the annual report, I talk about 5-year buckets. And we talk about being a long-term company all the time. And I think 5 years is sort of the minimum amount of time that you can sort of tell whether people really know what they're doing or not, or they're good at their job. You got to give people to do the job. Got to have time to let people do the job you've asked them to do. So on page 4 of the annual report, in the letter there, I talk about 5-year buckets. This chart and these numbers are exactly from that letter and the annual report, in case you want to follow along at home. And there's 10 boxes within there, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 10. I'm going to talk about each of them. Now, before I ask for some minutes of your time, there was one little math computation I did when I was thinking about this. And so this is 15 years of time of what's going on at Markel. And let's just say we have 22,000 people, and they work 2,000 hours a year. 15 times 22,000 times 2,000 is 660 man-hours of time that's being represented on this slide. So if y'all wouldn't mind just giving me about 8 minutes, I'd deeply appreciate that out of the 660 man-hours that are involved here. I'm going to talk about each one of them and then turn it over to Andrew and Simon. So box number 1, the operating revenues. Over the years, you can see that in those 5-year times that we've had, the revenues have gone, and I'm sorry, I have trouble sometimes seeing the numbers myself there, but from 20 billion to 36 to 66, if I'm reading that correctly. Let's just say a number to a bigger number to a bigger number than that. It's accurate, it's directionally correct, which is one of my hallmark phrases. That is $20 billion of votes, up to $56 billion of votes, of customers who are voting to do business with us, to buy what we are selling them in terms of product and services. And there's nothing we can do without starting with people starting to buy stuff from us. So that's box number 1 there. Box number 2 is where it starts to matter. And that's the adjusted operating income that we've earned from those revenues and those sales we've had with the customers. And you can see it's gone from 2.6 billion to a bigger number than that. And we'll break down that slide in a little bit. Our core legacy business is that of insurance, breaking the total down a little bit. To the earned premium numbers, well, you can see the premium growth that has happened in those 5-year buckets over the years. Again, same delightful pattern of big number, even bigger number than that. Well, box number 4, the underwriting profit, that's where it starts to get interesting. Because you can see in the first bucket of the 2011 to 15 time frame, there was $700 million of underwriting profit. In the next 5-year time frame, there was $600 million. That's lower, despite the fact that the premiums went from 15 to 23 billion or whatever it is out there. That was the turd in the punch bowl. That was a fallow period for Markel. And again, as I cited when we first talked, we are not perfect. We're human. We make mistakes. We get off track sometimes. But we're honest about that. We recognize that. We figure out what we need to do differently. And then we go about hard the business of correcting that and making it better. So we always want to communicate very candidly with you. And I think those 5-year buckets convey very important information. Our products, services, and other revenues, the Markel Ventures set, you can see an amazing growth story there from a small number to a bigger number to a much bigger number, a very rapid rate of growth. And again, it's important, go to box number 6 there, that the products and services and other income that you see coming along, the rate of growth is even faster, and Andrew will break that down for us a little bit. Number 7, the net investment income. One of the features of the Markel Group is that as we operate the insurance business in particular and the other businesses, they produce cash, and that cash gets invested. And that cash is invested in high-quality fixed income securities and equity securities, and it produces a recurring stream of interest and dividend income. And you can see, again, the same pattern emerging of a big number to a bigger number to a bigger number than that. Now, box number 8 there, the mark-to-market and equity securities. Tying that back to box number 2, where we use the word adjusted, Andrew helps me out with a lot of due diligence issues, and whenever we see a presentation or slide that has the word adjusted to it, what he does is de-adjusts and goes back to the original world. So what were we adjusting for in that adjusted operating income? We were taking out the volatility of what happens in the equity markets on any given period. But you can see over longer periods of time frame, and 5 years, we count that as long enough, we've made good money in investing in equity securities. And again, the same pattern, a big number to a bigger number to a bigger number than that, been the total returns on our equity securities. You net all of those things together, you get box number 9. That's the comprehensive income to the shareholders. Again, going from a $2.4 billion to a bigger number than that to a meaningfully bigger number than that. And then that concludes in box number 10, where the market, with some time delays, with some volatilities from time to time, generally speaking, figures it out. When we make more money, the value per share of stock tends to recognize that with some time lags, but you can see the rate of growth in the share price over time. So next slide, if I may. As I said, I do want to dive into the adjusted operating income, and the point I want to make here is the degree to which the diverse collection and the array of businesses we have was really quite helpful. So you can see in the insurance, the lower bar, the shade of beige or whatever that is, from 2018 through 1920 was flat or down a little bit, started going up in 21. That 6-year era, we really didn't have a breakout or the up and to the right patterns that we would normally hope to see in some of our operations, and Simon will talk about that in a minute. But while that was taking place, the other businesses, the venture set of businesses, they were growing quite nicely. And not only did they contribute income and cash, what they contributed was resiliency and the ability to take long-term views of things, the ability to make the right long-term decisions, to not take shortcuts, to do things the right way. And it's easier to do that with a full bank account than an empty one. And the resilience and diversity that comes from the array of businesses that we own is seen there. Now, what you're also starting to see as we go into 24, 25, 26, I think we're back on track, and Simon will talk about what's going on in the insurance business and things that have changed in his leadership, but it's certainly getting to a pretty good place there, and we've had continued growth in the Markel Ventures collection of businesses as well. So next slide, if I may. And by the way, all of those good things that are going on financially, as I said, we're about building the intrinsic value of each share of Markel stock that you own. And over the course of the last 5 years, we've bought back about 10% of our shares because we allocate our capital to where it has the highest and best use as best we can find it. So we are able to fund the growth of our existing businesses, be they insurance or non-insurance. We're able to make acquisitions of insurance and non-insurance businesses. We buy publicly traded securities, which you saw reflected in the growth in the net investment income and the growth in the value of the portfolio. And we pencil out the math to see how our stock is trading relative to what we think the value is. And as you'll see, actions speak louder than words, and we have repurchased about 10% of our shares at this point. So next slide. So how did all this happen? What are the components that made this reality come to be? Well, first off, we have a set of quality businesses. These are market leaders. Simon will talk about his dream of building one of the world's premier specialty insurance companies. It's a spectacular business. The array of businesses within Markel Ventures, the leading grower of inside house plants, the leading car carrier trailer manufacturing, trailer flooring, industrial gas. These are all leading businesses in the niches that they operate. And it tends to be that those are businesses that just persistently serve their customers well, serve their associates well, and continue to compound value over time. Secondly, we're diversified. We have an array of these businesses. At any given time, one business is going to be doing better than the other. Different economic cycles will apply to different businesses at different points in time. By virtue of the fact that we have a lot of figures and a lot of different pies, there's always plenty of pie, and that's a good thing. We do so in a financially conservative way. We don't excessively lever the balance sheet. We keep the debt low. And again, that aids us in keeping the long-term time horizons of thinking about things in a long-term way rather than being under the gun of a current interest bill or debt maturity. We have a very efficient structure, and I think this is extraordinarily important, and it's one of the reasons why Markel has done so well and will continue to do well. So there are 3 levels of very important cost savings, 2 of which you can see, one of which is not immediately visible, but it's real nonetheless. The first of those levels is the tax efficiency. So when we make money anywhere in the world in any business, we pay the tax on that. That is the appropriate thing that we do, and as would all law-abiding citizens. But if we put that money out in the form of dividends to you as a taxable shareholder, you as a shareholder would pay another layer of tax. So by keeping the capital inside the business largely, what we do is we pay one level of tax, so we're able to invest after-tax proceeds, as opposed to taxable shareholders who would be reinvesting after tax after another tax proceeds. So that is a very important structural advantage to the system and the architecture of the Markel Group writ large. Secondly, we cut out a lot of fees. If we distribute capital, and then when we have a good idea, need to get capital back from Wall Street and from intermediaries, they can't and shouldn't work for free. There's a lot of fees and commissions that are attached to the moving of capital in and outside of the organization. So as the old ads would say, we cut out the middleman and pass the savings on to you. That's an important level of cost efficiency for the business. The third point, and Andrew was the one who highlighted this and pointed this out to me, and he's exactly right. Every penny of what we spend in terms of management, salaries, employee compensation, incentive compensation, everything is accounted for and flows through our income statements. So you see that number, it's explicit each and every period, each and every year. By contrast, if you were looking at a private equity-backed organization, oftentimes some of the biggest chunks of management compensation don't come year by year by year, but they come when the business is sold. There's a payout and a bonus that's paid on exit that would be different. Those expenses never actually flow through the financial statements of those companies. So it's a hidden difference, but nonetheless, those costs are absorbed. Those costs are real. They're absorbed by the investors. They're implicit and not explicitly stated. In the case of the Markel Group, you're getting the explicit reporting of everything it costs to run your business. And that creates a huge tailwind of efficiency for us to help compound your capital. By virtue of this fact that we've operated both in insurance and non-insurance businesses and public markets for decades, almost a century, we've developed some skills and some abilities to reinvest that money and put that money to work at good rates of return over time. Those skills are inside the organization and have proven themselves over time. And finally, I think in keeping with the Markel style, it's truly a win-win-win system where our customers win, our employees win, and our shareholders win. With that, next slide. Let me turn it over to my partner, Andrew, to break things down in those 5-year buckets a little bit more in the realm of ventures.
Appreciate it. Can we hop to the next slide? I will say while we're switching over here, in Tom's defense on the numbers, I've never seen such big numbers show up so small on a screen. So in your defense, in terms of not being able to read the exact things, I will offer the perspective from up here that despite seeing billions and billions, they were about this small for us up here on stage, a little bigger for you all behind us. You talked about being directionally correct. One of the things that I think we work through over time is I like to be maybe a little more magnitudinally correct. And one thing I noticed in the 5-year buckets as they went across and was just kind of doing some math the first time I looked at that was, at least from the middle bucket to the most recent bucket, I mean, on average, those are doubles, more than doubles. And for those financial minds in the room, you know the rule of 72, and you can start quickly saying that's mid-teens. That's mid-teens over that period. That's a really, really strong number. So adding a little magnitude to the direction there. Where we're going to spend a few minutes now, my role at Markel is predominantly oriented to the businesses we report to you through our industrial, consumer, and other and financial segments in our updated financial disclosures. And so I want to just take a few minutes and talk about some of the things I see, particularly related to performance, that I hope you can see in the information that we share with you. We'll look at the performance over the last 5 years. We'll talk a little bit about why and what are key elements to that performance. And then we'll talk a little bit about why I think this is systemic. This isn't just a 5-year thing, right? This is built into the DNA of Markel Group rather than a feature that popped in a contemporary time frame. So on this slide, just so you see, that's the consolidated adjusted operating income that Tom showed earlier, and then the total numbers for each of those divisions. Next slide, please. So we talk a lot at Markel about relentlessly compounding your capital, our capital, over time. And my early days training in finance pointed out something that I think holds true in any time frame, and that is to do so, growing earnings at a rate that is at or above the rate of capital growth is a strong statement for your ability to increase returns on capital and thus shareholder returns over time. So it's a lens that when we're underwriting a business or we're looking at our own businesses that I always want to stare at and get my arms around. So on the screen here, you'll see an excerpt from the KPI table that we put in our most recent 10K. Thank you to the team that helped pull that project along and update our information. It was a heavy lift, but I think the valuable information is on the screen. What you see here is adjusted operating income by segment as well as total capital by segment. And in the bottom light tan, you'll see the 3 segments added together. Next to that, you see a 5-year CAGR. And what that shows is that the earnings power of these businesses grew 16% per year on average over the last 5 years. The capital, on the other hand, grew at 6. That ratio is about 2.5 to 1. So earnings grew at a rate 2.5 times the rate of capital. Without doing a whole lot of math, that tells me that we're doing better today than we were 5 years ago. And it's just a simple way to keep track of that over time. It won't happen every year. It may not happen to that magnitude, but it's something we're really proud of our businesses for achieving, is that discipline around capital and that ability to grow earnings. So let's talk a little bit about what drove that. Next slide, thank you. First thing is you got to grow earnings. You can't just do that by decreasing capital. And there are a lot of ways to think about earnings growth, but one area that we've provided some information to you is around the organic growth of the businesses in our family. It's a question we get a lot. Tyler Brown and I have a healthy debate about the value of organic growth. And at the end of the day, there is some value in understanding, are the businesses at Markel Group growing? And if you looked at all the numbers in that grid that was on the screen a minute ago and you took an average annual organic growth, you'd see it was 8% over the last 5 years. That's a big number. Now, look, in any one period, you might see a segment grow 15%. You might see a segment shrink 3%. That's a natural behavior of businesses rather than artificial constraints put to hit targets. But 8% over the last 5 years from an organic growth standpoint. The next point is capital discipline. And this is something that the system is designed to help our leaders maintain. We constantly talk about large capital decisions, and we constantly talk about excess cash. And where is excess cash, and do you need it to run your operations? Every business within our family is well capitalized, but they also generate a lot of cash. And when that cash isn't needed in that individual business, the goal is send it up. Send it to the holding company. Everything that we do about capital allocation requires the generation of cash and the ability to redeploy it. So over the last 5 years, businesses across these 3 segments generated more cash than this, but they sent $2.1 billion back up to the holding company. It's a pretty good number. Just growing earnings, just having the capital discipline still isn't enough. We still have to find ways to put that capital to work, and there are a lot of ways we could talk about it, but just one number to put out there is over the last 5 years, we've invested $1.3 billion into acquisitions. Just doing acquisitions isn't enough. You got to pair all 3 of these things together. But when you say, how in the world did we grow capital at such a small fraction and earnings at such a large fraction, such that it was 2.5 times over the last 5 years? These are three key elements to that. But they're not just the last 5 years. And if you'll jump to the next slide, talk about what's behind that and why I think it will continue. So on growing earnings, Tom mentioned this in some of his commentary around the system. Our businesses operate in durable, essential markets that are growing at mid, low, upper single digits, but they're growing over time. Anytime we talk about a business in our family or we're looking at something that we might do, the first thing we ask is, does it have a structural headwind or tailwind, right? Is this something where the wind's gonna be at our back, or are we gonna be fighting every day just to stay in the same place? And we're very blessed to have businesses operating in a whole host of markets that have tailwinds. We can talk about fire protection, we can talk about insurance, we can talk about concierge medicine, we can talk about any one of our markets, and the vast majority of them really have the wind at their back over time. Second of all, our businesses, as Tom mentioned, they're market leaders. And that's nice, you know, it's a little blue ribbon, I'm the market leader. But what does it also enable? It enables cost advantages, price advantages, innovation at scale, the ability to recruit and retain incredible talent. I think you've got to see some of those folks today. There's so many things that come with market leadership, and we have a strong desire to lead the markets that we're in, and our businesses do a great job, and we feel like that will provide further tailwinds beyond just what the market growth is. Lastly, I was at a university not too long ago. There's actually a student in the room from that class. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing, but we were talking about leadership. And there were takeaways from a prior class, and one of the comments was, Apple's such a good business it can be run by a ham sandwich. And I don't know that I would call Tim Cook a ham sandwich. I think the guy's probably one of the best 5 CEOs in the last 20 years, and his predecessor was up there as well. Our businesses aren't run by ham sandwiches. These are incredible leaders. I mean, just, gosh, I get teared up. You got to see Simon earlier. You all got a lot of laughs from Ross. I wish I had Ross up here now. It'd be a lot more fun. And Kyle, and I could go on and on. We've got many leaders in the room, but these businesses are well run by great people. And this system attracts them. Anytime that we ever have to make a change or that someone retires, we kind of hold our breath. You know, we worry about who's next? Can we keep this going? And what I can comfortably tell you is over 15 years that I've been here, every single time we do that, we get stronger. And this system is built to attract high-quality leaders. Capital discipline. Look, one measure that the financially oriented folks look at is pre-tax returns on tangible capital. That's a lot of words. What it really means is if you rip out the purchase accounting when we buy a business, how's that business really doing with the inherent capital that's there? Over the last 5 years, that number was 25-ish. I think 26 is the exact number, but let's call it 25%. That's a really strong number. So when we reinvest capital, we're reinvesting at a high rate. We always focus on fair price. Tom always talks about our 4 lenses. It's the 4th lens on there. Fair price means that when you walk away from the table, one, you're excited, but you're also a little uncomfortable, and so is the other side. But to quantify that over the last 5 years when we've made an acquisition, it's been at less than 9 times operating income. That's in a world where prices have continued to go up. We've tried to maintain our discipline, still seeking that same quality that's inherent to being a part of our system, but doing so with the discipline around price. And lastly, as I mentioned, we returned $2.1 billion of cash to the holding company. We'll continue to do that over time. If it's useful in a business, let's keep it there. If it's not, let's move it up so we can reinvest it elsewhere. The last bucket here on reinvestment, we see a lot of opportunities. It's a real privilege to have you all as aligned partners, to have the leaders of our companies, to have a few bankers that actually like us and share good ideas. Over time, we might see 500 things in the course of a year, and that flow is an important part of our ability to discern what's a great place to put your capital. And I think we're well positioned to continue to get that flow. Lastly, when that flow comes in the door, and I'm requiring a little bit of trust in you in this, but we've been at this for 21 years on the Markel Venture side. That's not that long compared to the near century of Markel, but in the world that we traffic in, that's a reasonable amount of time. And I think we've proven to have a unique model out there. It's not for everybody, but there are leaders, there are businesses, there are advisors who look to us as a unique partner in the world. And when that's the case, we're set up for success. And I want to stay on that and continue to perpetuate our reputation in that area. It's an intangible that doesn't show up on the balance sheet. Brian won't let us capitalize it. But I do think we've got a wonderful model that'll help us keep going over time. With that, I'll hand it over to Simon.
Thanks, Andrew. And you know, it's just fantastic to be sat up here and just looking at some of those numbers. And You know, a lot of the things that you guys have been doing have given me the opportunity over the last year or so to be able to make some of the changes that we're going to talk about in this next section. So on to insurance. I can feel people on the edge of their seats in this auditorium. This is a phrase that we kicked off the year with in 2026. We call it building to win. And I like it because it really captures every decision that we've been making over the past 12, 15 months. Has been designed to build an organization or rebuild an organization that can go out to the marketplace and start winning again. So everything I'm going to talk about today is around those concepts of building and winning. So if we go on to the next slide, at the very core of my job within this organization, this system that you guys speak of, is to produce consistent underwriting profits. Without that kind of gold at the center of what we're doing here, the system doesn't work to the degree that it should do. And I did this in Omaha last year, but I want to be completely honest with people about where we've stood over the last, 3 years or so of underwriting. You can see that kind of boxed off. This is our combined ratio over time on a quarterly basis. And for those of you, who follow insurance, the lower the score, the better. And if you're over 100, you're actually making a loss. Now you can see in that period from Q3 23 to Q2 25, so that's 2 years, we were pretty marginal at times loss-making with within the insurance business. Now, there was a lot going on underneath the covers there, and it wasn't that period of time that was the problem. It was the seeds were sown long before that in many respects. And a lot of what we have had to do to get back to consistent underwriting profitability is really hard work on our portfolio management. So just a few things that we've done on that underwriting portfolio. In the casualty business in the US, we've reduced the proportion of construction risks that we're underwriting in that particular area. We've also decreased our average line size quite significantly. We've come out of our D&O, our public D&O underwriting, which was a kind of $200-something million line of business. So we completely pulled out of that in the US. We came out of collateral protection insurance, CPI, which was a misstep. And we've also come out of global re. Now, a lot of those decisions that we made at the time were good economic ones, but if you go talk to brokers about the things that you're now stepping away from, that they kind of relied on you to underwrite, that is not a popular thing to do. It's hard yards to go and do those things. But this is not a popularity contest, it's a profitability contest. And that's really, really important for our guys to understand. And as we've seen the improvement in the later years there, or the later quarters rather, the last 3 quarters, it's actually slightly sub 93 in each of those quarters. We can see the green shoots emerging of those difficult decisions that we had to make over the course of the last 18 months. It's hard yards. So those of you that are in the insurance side of the business that sit in the audience, that work was worth it. And it will continue to be worth it, but we've got to keep going at producing these types of results for another 3 quarters and another 3 quarters after that. I think we'll get our halo effect that Tom talks about quite a lot back if we continue to produce results like this. Now, here's the thing. You can do some good portfolio management by cutting things, and often that's required. It's like pruning in a garden. But you cannot cut to greatness. You have to do things to rejuvenate growth in an organization and to become market leading again. So if we move to the next slide, last year I stood on stage or sat on stage and I talked a lot of talk, I was saying these are the things that we're going to do, and I talked about P&Ls and reorganizing and getting rid of matrix structures and all the rest of it. Over the last 12 months, I think the team has really walked the walk, and I picked the big 6 things that really happened. The dreadful 4-dimensional matrix structure in the US, which meant every decision we were making on the underwriting side had to be done by committee, is gone. Very detailed clarity on who is responsible for what. We reorganized the business into 3 divisions, wholesale and specialty, programs and solutions in our international business, each of them led by a terrific leader in Wendy Hauser, Alex Martin, and Andrew McMillan. Under those 3 divisions, we've got 14 business units, and every single one of those 14 business units has their own P&L and a leader that sits on top of those P&Ls. All of our financial reporting and our management information, thanks to Brian and your team, massive efforts, are now aligned to that new structure, and so is the compensation of the leaders that drive that new structure as well. We stepped away from the loss-making business, which was Global Re. $1.2 billion worth of gross written premium, most of that net earned premium and revenue to us as well. And 80% of the 2,200 people that work for the central part of our organization have now become part of individual businesses, so those 14 business units. So they are close to the business, close to the customers, and every day going to work with winning on mind. So a massive amount of organizational change on top of the portfolio changes that we made, which I think sets us up fantastically for 2026 and beyond. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to talk about a few concepts, a few of the pillars that are really going to drive our success over the next 3 and 5 years. And it all begins, in my book, with strategy. And in strategy, there's just 2 questions that you need to care about. The first is where to play, and the second is how to win. For a long time in the insurance business, we were fiddling around with lots of different things and where we wanted to play. But our heartland, where we built this business, is in specialty insurance. That is a $700 to $800 billion marketplace globally. We write $9.5 billion of that. There is ample road to run in the space where we can make a difference, and we should be confident in attacking that space. And by the way, it tends to grow every year as well, so it's not just a zero-sum game where that doesn't grow. It's plenty big enough, the grass is not greener. So once you become comfortable in where you're playing, the question then is how do you win at that game? And I feel passionately there are 4 things above all others that differentiate a winner against the also-rans. The 4 things: customer focus, complete obsession over customers. If we can't outcompete the standard marketplace, business will never come to the specialty marketplace. We have to offer things to our customers that others do not. That comes from market-leading expertise. We need to put together teams of people who are absolutely focused on their specific area of our industry, and they're complete experts in it, and we create these kind of Navy SEAL teams that come around it, because people in this industry buy expertise and they rely on it. Thirdly, speed is utterly critical. The ability to make decisions at ground level, close to customer, at speed, will win you business 9 times out of 10 in this industry. So you have to get better at getting rid of bureaucracy. So the decision-making autonomy, which we've pushed down into the divisions as a result of the new structure, and critically, technology are what will drive that speed to market. And finally, this is a trust game. People are buying a piece of paper that tells them that we will be good for our claim in the event of the worst happening. Consistently doing the right thing in both claims and the way that we act with our customers is absolutely tantamount to success in this industry. You do those 4 things well within specialty insurance, you've got a heck of a good chance of building an incredible business within it. So strategy is one thing. The question we ask on the next slide is, well, how do we structure ourselves? And I've alluded to this a little bit so far, but it's simple in my mind. I talk about building, and really what I'm talking about there is building blocks. So what is it, this ground-up mentality that Tom talked about earlier? We've got Markel Insurance, roughly $9 or so billion, split a third into our 3 major divisions. But underneath that, you've got the 14 P&Ls, which are the white words here. So in programs and solutions in the middle there, you can see Bermuda, our small commercial workers' comp business, personal lines, et cetera, et cetera. Well, within those 14 P&Ls, those 14 business units, actually, the business gets broken up even further by those business units leaders. And there probably are P&Ls that sit within those. That's how they run them. And every single one of those blocks that you see in front of you have people, products, technology, and customers sitting around them. And those leaders, the people who sit in those blocks, that's where the magic really, really happens in this specialty business that we've created. And there's one picture of one individual there, a guy called Esteban Manzano, a man we sent out to Madrid back in 2005 to go build a business. The wonderful thing, my favorite meeting of the whole of 2025 was when Tony, Markel, and I got on a plane and went around Europe. And Tony had never been, I think never been to Spain, certainly never been to Madrid. And Tony was able to walk into our office with his name above it. He looked quite pleased about that, Tony, I think, and see 80 Markel associates in a $65 million business operating at a combined ratio of a sub 90. And Tony had never even been there. The guy that drove that was Esteban and the team that he's built around us. And if you took any one of the blocks that you see in front of them, there's a story equivalent to Esteban's within each and every one of them. So it is a wonderful story of being able to build a business piece by piece. And if we decide to add a block in here, it works within the system and the structure that we've created. We move on to the next slide. I am certain that we're going to have a ton of questions about technology and AI. So I'll keep my comments very, very brief at this stage, and hopefully in the Q&A we'll talk to them. But there are 3 levels in a business of that breadth, both globally and in the product suites. There are 3 levels of bets that you need to make on AI and technology. The first is on transformational bets. So I believe we can build brand new businesses from scratch within Markel Insurance in the next, and we'll be doing this in the next few weeks, that can transform the way that we provide services and business in certain aspects of the specialty market. So we can go ground up from scratch and create a completely new business. We can reimagine the business divisions that we already have. So in areas like financial institutions in the US and transactional liability over in London, we have completely reimagined how we provide our insurance business with the use of AI, building that from the ground up. And finally, there are hundreds and hundreds of things that you can do just to improve your business 1% every single day in these quick wins. And I'd just like to turn over to a video so the people that are making these quick wins happen can talk directly to you and give you a flavor of what's happening in AI in Markel Insurance. Run VT.
It's an exciting time at Markel. We're really thinking about AI as a capability and how that can help us serve our customers better. So we've set up 2 AI centers of enablement, one for international, led by Maureen Tomlinson, and one for the US and Bermuda, led by Richie Henry.
The Center of Enablement is designed to do just that, to enable our people with access to tools and capabilities. We want to democratize AI across Markel.
We're taking the approach from a grassroots, from the bottom up. And why is that important? Because it's going to bring out the more innovative approaches, use cases, because we're going to those individuals that are closer to the work.
We've created an AI Accelerator Fund. I think it's really important that you hear directly from the people who've been involved with these AI Accelerator use cases, so you're going to hear from them now.
Imagine someone browsing a horse listing online. That listing already includes things like age, breed, location, and price. Our AI uses that information to instantly provide a rate indication. The customer will see 3 coverage options in a good, better, best format, similar to what they're used to with home and auto insurance. It answers early pricing questions up front and lets our team focus on more complex, nuanced risks.
Fun fact, Harvey AI was named after Harvey Specter, which was a fictional attorney in this show called Suits. So Harvey was designed by lawyers for legal research and actions. Fast forward, underwriting, we review a lot of documents and we have to make decisions, some legal binding decisions. And so Harvey AI is a perfect tool to analyze dense text in order to figure out if we should or should not be on a risk. We're probably saving 7 to 10x as far as time goes on underwriting accounts. The underwriters love it. The book is growing. We'll probably add to staff based on size of the book and the complexity of accounts that are coming through. But AI is helping us be a market leader in turnaround time as far as getting the quotes out the door.
My AI Accelerator idea focuses on automating manual underwriting and audit review processes, particularly within personal lines and delegated authority business. The goal is to allow AI to review more submissions and transactions than we could ever do manually, flagging risks, patterns, and exceptions, and then escalating those to what truly needs human attention.
My idea is Winsight. We went to CapTech with a very high-level idea.
how do we take hundreds or thousands of account level data and filter it down to just a few accounts that we know we can compete on and really want to write based on our guidelines. What this allows us to do, instead of going to the broker with hundreds of accounts, we're able to go to them with a very select number of accounts that we want to write and we know we're going to be a great partner on.
At Markel, we're celebrating how successful we've been with artificial intelligence. We're seeing fantastic adoption rates, 97% Copilot users over the last 6 months. That's well above benchmarks. We've done that by empowering the individuals in our business who are close to the customer and allowing them to make sure that they're doing the things that they can to serve those customers better.
All right, so there's a lot going on around AI. That's just a flavor. I'm sure we'll touch on it later. The final pillar that's really been transformational in the last 12 months is around culture. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take an organization which had become a little bit middle-aged, we'd stopped doing things and really grinding out new products. And we've really tried to instill what we call a founder's mentality across the organization. There are 3 bits of founder's mentality that are important. The first is insurgency. The idea that what we are doing is just going to be better than everybody else in the marketplace. A complete passion to deliver something which is way better for our customers. And the second is that customer obsession. The fact that we obsess and we understand our customers and meet them where they are at every single day. And the third is an owner mindset. We've heard that a couple of times. So every dollar that we spend on these businesses feels like it's our money and we're proud of the businesses that we're building. The second is just beginning to win again. The idea that we come to work to win rather than just do work is a really critical part of the culture that is instilled in people across the organization. Bureaucracy is the thing more than anything that kills once brilliant organizations. Our job is to stamp bureaucracy out wherever we find it. And that is a cultural aspect of how we run this business. And finally, pure joy and enjoyment. I hear laughter in the air more than I have done in a long period of time, and I hear ambition in every corridor that we walk down. So you put the strategy alongside the structure, the use of new technology, people really, really wanting to be part of this organization, and you put some laughter in and amongst that, I think we've found ourselves in a position now where we can really take this organization to the next place and put ourselves back as the preeminent specialty insurer on the planet. Thank you. With that to Tom.
Simon, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. This is a delightful time when we get to share the progress that we've made, and I hope you can feel the sensation of the joy that we're finding in the progress that we're making and getting things on the right track. Time for Q&A. We've got 3 spots from which to take questions: Zone 1, Zone 2, and our own Tyler Brown over there with questions. You're more than welcome to ask any question that you would like. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have a discussion as much as possible. If you would be so kind as to tell us when you are recognized who you are, perhaps how long you've owned Markel shares, and then proceed with your question. So with that, Zone 1.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Jeff Stacy. I'm from Toronto, a longtime Markel shareholder. Just want to start by thanking you and your colleagues for putting on such a terrific reunion. It's just an amazing forum to learn more about our company. So congratulations and well done. My question is about the recent letter from JANA partners to the Markel board. I read the letter very carefully, and it strikes me that because JANA is so public in stating their views, that it's easy to get the impression that they represent the majority of Markel shareholders, and I think the reality of this situation is much different. And I'll only start by speaking for myself as a longtime shareholder. I think it would be a huge mistake to sell the Markel Ventures unit. I personally I like the superior business economics and the cash flow diversity that it brings to Markel. And I need to tell you, I've spoken to many other shareholders, and I haven't found a single one that supports the notion that this is a good idea. So again, I just say I think it'd be a huge mistake to sell the Markel Ventures unit. Now, the other issue that JANA raised was around share repurchases, and it seems to me that there's some more common ground between Markel and JANA on that issue. Markel's been buying back shares, as you showed in your presentation, for a number of years now, and you've publicly stated that, you know, given the current share price, you would expect the robust pace to continue. I will just say, yeah, tender offers can make sense in many situations, but they're also costly, time-consuming, and they often result in low take-up rates and higher prices being paid than a slow, steady methodical compounding or purchase of shares. So even on this issue, I find the approach you're already taking more compelling than what JANA is suggesting. So while I accept that JANA has the right to advocate for any course of action they want, as does any Markel shareholder, I think the time has come for them to recognize that they don't represent most shareholders and their views are contra to what most shareholders want. And for them to continue advocating with this approach is just time consuming for management. It's a time drain and a distraction. So my question is just simply, would you care to comment on this?
I think I prefer hearing you comment on it. Yeah. Jeff, no, thank you very much. I appreciate the questions. To be fair, when JANA first raised the issues, I happened to have been in New York City at the time. I was in a meeting. My phone started buzzing quite a bit, so I excused myself and went and looked at my phone, and I said, "Oh, a bad word." So I called those folks, and I said, you know, as it turns out, and of course they make their actions without telling us first or giving us any calls or whatnot. You know, they have their own agendas and what they're trying to do. So I said, I happen to be in New York City. I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss this face to face. Now, I could be at your office by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I did so. I was advised by my advisors and counselors to go and be listen only, listen only, listen only. And I went in for this meeting, and for the first 45 minutes, I would give myself an A, maybe an A+. On listen only. I probably slipped to maybe a B+ or maybe even a B or B- as we got into the last 15 minutes or so, because there were some factual things that I just wanted to ask. Where did you come up with this? Where did you come up with that? To make sure we agreed upon the facts. I also said at the same time that they raised a lot of legitimate issues. And we talked about those 5-year buckets, and we talked about how bureaucracy had crept in, as Simon would say, that we'd lost our way a little bit. That was a fair criticism, and I acknowledged and said that. I would say that right now. But we had already started to take steps to make that better, and we were working hard at it. I will share a story with you, which my wife tells me not to do, so of course I'm going to do it. And in that conversation, I asked, had they done insurance-related things before, and they really hadn't done a lot of insurance-related things. And so we talked about the accounting, the time sequences that are involved. So if we sell an insurance premium, you know, we might collect that money on day one, but we will amortize and sort of accrue that premium over the course of a year. And normally it's at least 2 years before you really get an indication as to, you know, how well that particular book of business is doing. So the kinds of things that Simon is doing right now and the kinds of things that we were starting to do, it's just now. I've used the phrase green shoot. And then, you know, in our second quarter of a 93, I called that green shoots. But there's a lot more plural to come behind that S. So I was just sort of trying to have an accounting conversation, which people love having, by the way. And I said, you know, to give that 2-year horizon, and I said, no disrespect here, Simon, but I said, if we had Jesus Christ running our insurance business, it would be 2 years before whether we knew if he knew what he was doing or not yet. So give the guy a break. Give him some time. I think the core difference and the core ways in which we see the world differently, and it's not right or wrong, it's just different, is Markel is a long-term company. We are coming up on 100 years. People invest their life in this company. I have people come up to me and they say, you know, the biggest chunk of my net worth is in Markel stock. That is a heavy responsibility. And that is a responsibility I take very seriously. There's an epic amount of trust that has been placed in us from investors, from our colleagues. It's our own life story as well of our own accumulation. And when you think about things in the time horizons that we think about things, the pace at which we're repurchasing shares is subject to a lot of other factors of what goes on in financial markets, what deals are we seeing that we want to have dry powder and the ability to execute on should they come about? What is our opportunity and ability to answer the bell for the next round of the fight over and over and over again, no matter what happens to us? And the financial conservatism and the pace at which we've operated is reflective of that, to make sure that we continue to compound the value of your company forever and right now. But thank you for the question. Zone 2.
Hi, Tom. My name is Joey Opekin, and I've been a shareholder since 2019. I'm based out of Richmond. Thank you again for holding such a wonderful event. Now, Andrew answered my first question during the presentation, so we'll go with the backup. This question is for Simon and Brian. How should we look at the future of float over the next few years after exiting the reinsurance business? Should we expect it to accelerate as more resources get funneled into specialty and Markel Insurance doubles down on its bread and butter core business? Thank you.
Nominate Costanzo.
Yeah. Thanks for your question. I think you'll see two different dynamics going on there. So first, we put the global re business into runoff. When we do that, we stop writing new premiums, so that stops generating new float. The reserves sit there for a long time. And so we've got about $3 billion of reserves. Those are longer tail reserves, so that float's gonna sit on the books. It'll sit there for a while and continue to be invested in the securities that we hold. At the other side of the equation is what Simon talked about and all the growth strategies that we have and how do we redeploy that capital into our other business units that we have. And so that's where you'll see the growth in the float coming in the future. The ability to grow in those 14 P&Ls, the growth that we have there, we'll continue to reinvest that float further and further and compound, but at better combined ratios and better returns on capital. So at the end of the day, the two metrics that we're looking at on a day in, day out basis is what's our combined ratio, how much are we making on the underwriting profits, and how efficient are we with the capital that we're using to generate those underwriting profits. And so the changes in the disclosures we made to have return on equity is a key metric. That's been something I've been after for a while. That's near and dear to everything that we do, and it's core to how we manage the business every day.
Yeah, one point I would offer on that is that we obviously stopped underwriting the reinsurance business. That was the decision we made. Brian says it's now in runoff. We continue to actively look to draw a line underneath that reinsurance book. If the right deal comes across the table where we can essentially buy a loss portfolio transfer, sort of reinsurance policy, or and transfer those losses over, or an adverse development cover. If the right economics are there, we'll probably take that, so we can sort of release some of the capital and then move on with those growth strategies. So it's very much, that area of the business is very much something that we talk on a fairly frequent basis.
Thank you, Joy. Mr. Brown.
All right. I was going to begin with a question about Omaha, because for the first time since 1991, we didn't have our Omaha brunch, and that would have been naturally where a lot of shareholders would have gotten some of your perspective on Berkshire, and we had some questions to that effect. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to answer Scott Chapman's question, which: has the retirement of Warren Buffett as CEO changed your thinking about the large allocation to Berkshire, and do you feel constrained by the large unrealized capital gain in that position?
Well, thank you. So I'll start with the end, the constrained by the large unrealized capital gain position. May the Lord smite me with such a curse. We will, we will worry about those kinds of problems as much as we possibly can and would love to do so. That contributes to the tax efficiency that we talked about. So if you look at the equity portfolio in total, at the end of the first quarter, I think the unrealized gain was a little north of $8 billion. It's probably more than that today. So that would be roughly a $2 billion deferred tax liability that we would have. That means there's $2 billion working on your behalf as shareholders, for which our cost of capital is 0. That is an awesome advantage. And I think that number is probably the second highest total of any company in the country. And so I think it's stunning. This little business that grew in Richmond, Virginia, now has the second biggest unrealized gain of any company in the country, obviously with the largest one being that of Berkshire. So high-class problem. If the economics were such that I was concerned that we should sell it anyway and give up that tax advantage, we would do it. But we would always do it thoughtfully as to, if we were reinvesting 80-cent dollars as opposed to 100-cent dollars, is that the wise thing to do? Sometimes it is. So we're very open-minded about that. In terms of the brunch out there, we decided we would trade the Omaha brunch for the Richmond barbecue. I didn't know it was going to be 100 degrees literally for barbecue, but we did want to shift the focus and the emphasis to Richmond because things are changing out there. The first question, again, the feelings and the sensation we would have about Berkshire. I think it's a wonderful investment. I think it'll continue to be a good investment. I think it is diversified, it's low cost, it's very well run, Greg Abel will do a fine job. And in the course of time, it's like, if you think about JP Morgan, great company, 150, 60, whatever, how many years old JP Morgan is. I think most of us, if we had to take a bet on naming the first chairman ever of JP Morgan, we could probably come up with the winning bet. The first chairman and CEO of JP Morgan was J.P. Morgan. I think there's a lot of people who probably can name the current chairman and CEO of JP Morgan. That's Jamie Dimon, very public figure, well-known business leader. There were a lot of people who served in that role between JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon, and I don't know any of them. And I think a lot of us would struggle to come up with the names of people who had that job. But it was a seasoned executive, a professional, somebody who was qualified to do the job. And I think the case we can expect with Berkshire for a long time to come is that is a major, substantial, well-diversified business that will be well-run by a talented team of investors. There will never be another Warren Buffett, one of a kind. But the good news is that's not what Berkshire needs at this point. What Berkshire needs are talented executives to run it, and they have them. Zone one.
My name is Rith. I am from Richmond, and I am 5-year Markel shareholder. I have a small question, and I will be happy if you all four can answer. It's not an original question. I was reading Davis Dynasty, and Senior Davis used to visit insurance companies, and he will ask one question. And he used to ask, if you had one silver bullet to shoot a competitor, which competitor you would like to shoot? So.
I am not going to even allow my colleagues to answer that question. I don't like to be dictatorial top-down, but I'm going to say that. We are competitive, and we want to win. And there's times where we see people doing things or saying things about Markel that sort of gets under our skin, and so be it. But positivity is important. Optimism is important. Goodwill is important. Grace, trying to meet people halfway in a positive way. And we've been through a time period of adversity and some challenges. But at the end of the day, that is handing over the agenda to somebody else and letting somebody else control the way you feel. And that's a mistake. I love your story about the helping people. And just, all right, the situation that's helpless and whatnot, you can help somebody. And then that goes so well that somebody starts helping and the daisy chain reaction is set off in a positive way. So we're not about the business of shooting other people. We've shot ourselves in the foot from time to time, and we're stopping doing that. So we're putting the guns down and running the business. I said you could.
I'm gonna say one thing. It's like often you go like, oh, the competitors, you know, let's get rid of them or something like that. I don't think like that. Some of the competitors have done things to outcompete us, but which we can learn from. And if you just stare and put your head in the sand and go like, I just hate the other guy, misses the point. It's like customer feedback is a gift. Competitors outcompeting you in an area can be a gift if you're playing a long-term game. Figure the game out and outcompete them, and I think that's what we're trying to do now. We've changed a little bit in our so don't worry, Tom, I wasn't going to name anybody.
I was going to say, if you had asked me that question at 12:15 after Coach Cook was done talking, if you were at the forum and I was ready to run through a wall, I probably would have answered that question. I've at least had a few hours to calm down now a little bit, so.
I feel like I have to say something, even though my mic's cut.
You can see how well the fact that my colleagues are not going to answer this, how that works.
I will say, so our friends at Costa Farms have a great phrase around this, and they're kind people, but they are die-hard competitors. And what they talk about is, we want to promote that competitor to customer. And at the end of the day, what they really mean is we want to eat their lunch such that they buy our plants instead of growing their own. And I think the notion of competition, you earn the results that you get. You don't demand them. You don't sit back and self-victimize. If you're going to beat the competition, you do it because you earn it. And I think the leaders of our businesses think about that every single day, is how do they earn the right to win, not how do they just get it.
Iron sharpens iron, absolutely. Zone 2.
Hello, my name is Giovanna Eichner. I am from Green Century Capital Management, and we have been investors in Markel for about 5 years now. And my question is for Mr. Wilson in particular. And so something that I would appreciate insight on is, given the importance of Markel's insurance business to investor returns and the company's focus on long-term profitability, how is Markel assessing the potentially increasing exposure of certain lines of its businesses to physical risks, including increasingly severe and more frequent climate-related disasters?
Thanks for the question. So I'll take the property question, which you're touching on there, but I might pivot as well to casualty, because there's some things happening in the economy over here in the US which we should be mindful of as well. It is clear that there are certain, sort of events which occur. Some people say more frequently, others sort of, they're not entirely sure on the windstorm. What is absolutely clear on windstorm in the southeast of the US is that as and when they do come, the value of the property that has been built in that particular part of the world is way more expensive than it was 10 years ago and clearly 20 years ago as well. So we have to be really mindful that those incidents do happen, and we've seen Cat 5 hurricanes that haven't made landfall, that if they did, it could be quite significant. What we're doing from an insurance standpoint on that is we're actually relatively limited in the amount of property cat business that we write. We do have some cat exposed risk, some energy installations that we have in the Gulf of Mexico. We have some properties up and down the Florida coast, but we're not overly focused on that particular line of business, and we do buy quite substantial reinsurance for it as well. So we do believe that this thing can happen, and I think wildfire is something that is a very, very significant issue for us as well. But all the modeling that we do in our property book and all the reinsurance that we buy are very thoughtful in terms of what's the biggest loss that we would be prepared to stomach from an incident like a windstorm or a wildfire, and we trade within that. So managing that very tightly. The area that actually concerns me more than property, because in property you can really model things and you can know where your exposure is and how much the value of that exposure will cost you in the event of one of these storms. What is more harder to gauge is the casualty problem. So this is, people call it social inflation. It's the US legal system, which is absolutely unbelievable at the moment. I say that as a Brit. I'll give you an example of this. There's a road traffic accident that was caused by one of our insureds rear-ended a vehicle that was in front of him, causing really sad injuries to the person that was driving the car in front. There is no doubt that our driver was responsible for that, and a payment needed to be made from a claims perspective. Now, this is 2 or 3 years ago. Those claims used to go, so we've got history in this area, quite large claims would typically go between $10 million and $20 million, depending on the jury and the arguments of the case. So we offered $11 million to settle the claim. The other side said $19 million. We said $12 million, they said 19. We said 13, they said 19. We said 14, they said 19. Okay, let's take this one to trial. This is, because we've offered and we've offered and we've offered, and we don't seem to be making progress. It goes to trial. The jury says $200 million. And you're like, what the heck just happened? So this is, depending on the geography where these trials are occurring and the jury selection, you're getting these absolutely, well, we call them nuclear verdicts, but they're out of nowhere, these incredibly severe decisions. Now, that 200 million was reduced down to 100 million or so in subsequent trial, but you're still gone for something which is between 5 and 10x what you expected it to be, and that is happening increasingly. And as the legal firms and the private equity money sees the opportunity to profit from this kind of adventurism, this wall of money is being thrown at the system to literally take insurance companies to court and to sue them. So we're doing a heck of a lot within our casualty business to reduce the threat of this social inflation, mad legal system situation that we're finding ourselves at the moment. And that is the hardest thing in our underwriting portfolio that we see at the moment. And some of the issues that I've described in that kind of middle years that we're coming back from were really akin to the casualty and the third-party losses that we're beginning to see. I think we've got cleverer about it in terms of the way that we're underwriting at the moment, but this pervasive investment strategy that we see across the country isn't going away anytime soon.
Thank you. Fowler.
Moving to a question from John Marin, which speaks to the competitive position of some of the Markel Ventures businesses. He asked, many of the Markel Ventures businesses like Brahmin or Costa Farms are businesses most investors would never encounter in public markets. What characteristics make a private business attractive enough for Markel to give up liquidity and hold it indefinitely?
I'll take the first stab at this and invite Andrew to jump in as well. So we've talked a long time about the 4 lenses we use to select our equity securities. And they are, we want a good business that earns good returns on its capital and doesn't use too much debt to do it, not over leveraged. We want management teams with equal measures of talent and integrity. We want businesses that have the ability to reinvest or demonstrated capital discipline through acquisitions or dividends. And 4, we want those at fair prices. That has been the consistent methodology by which we've selected publicly traded securities for 30 plus years. It's the same methodology that we use to invest in privately held companies. And actually, in the case of a tie, we would lean towards a privately held company because that reinvestment decision, rather than delegating that to another company, we're in control of that decision. So we like that.
Yeah, I mean, we could speak business by business, and I think you would start to wrap your head around what we like about them, but I think the concept is what you're asking about. And I'll point out a couple things that are included in our system. I mean, one, the notion of a system that generates, let's call it lower correlated cash flows. We all appreciate that in certain times correlations move up, is a healthy dynamic. And when you own a share of a public company, you don't control the cash flows. You can choose to sell the shares, but there's a tax event. We talked through some of that earlier. So by having these businesses in our system, we generate cash on a daily basis that can be reinvested elsewhere. And I think that's one advantage. Another is capital works multiple ways in our system. And one of the things we always ask ourselves in the holding company is there a more efficient way to do it? And if you were to look at some of the work that we're focused on today, it's still in that area, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're efficient with the capital we have. And for those that are astute readers of our financial disclosures, you'd see things like in a footnote that we've loaned money from an insurance sub across. That's one of the ways we drive capital efficiency. We do get some capital credit through that. We get some qualitative benefits by having these diversified cash flows. So there's each business, but then I think the concept of having this system as part of the broader Markel Group has its advantages from the cash it generates and the efficiency of the capital.
There's one other advantage, and you can just cut me off when you want me to stop talking, but I want to tell a specific story about one of the Markel Ventures companies where I think in addition to...
All right, stop now.
Yeah, yeah. I knew you would say that. In addition to the advantages that Andrew just spoke of, this business is better off because it's part of Markel. Yeah. And we and you as our partners in owning a business like this, our structure of being able to own a business in the way we do helps the business be better. And I'm going to tell the story of Brahmin handbags a little bit. So when that first came to our awareness, my total knowledge of handbags rounded to 0. I did ask Susan about, has she ever heard of a Brahmin handbag? And Susan says, yes, I have 2 of them. So Susan's an engineer, she's pretty tough, has her own money, and the fact that she, unsolicited, completely independent of any deal or whatnot, had 2 of them, that was a very interesting fact to me. So I said, well, tell me about them. Why do you like them? What caused you to do that? And so she walked me through her decision process and how she came to be an owner of a Brahmin bag. Well, okay, I heard that. And then I went over to the Dillards here in Short Pump, and Dillards carries Brahmin bags, and I sort of was a stalker in the handbag department and touching these handbags and looking at them and fondling them and whatnot. And the clerk came over and sort of asked, can I help you? And something like that. And I said, well, I'm just looking. And it was true. I was looking.
I think I'm going to cut you off now.
No. I have my own handbag stories about you, but we'll leave those for another day.
Fair.
So at any rate, what I could tell is that it was a quality product. So the cost of goods sold that goes into a Brahmin bag is a very high percentage. You're getting what you paid for. And as someone who was thinking about that compared to some of the higher priced, more uber luxury brands where image, mystique, cachet is more of a thing, if you wanted to knock off something like that, I could sort of see the economics of how you would do that. When you buy a Brahmin bag and you touch it and feel it, you're getting a quality product. And if somebody tried to knock that off, they really couldn't deliver the same quality. The leather's not as good, it's not as substantial a piece. So I thought that was a protected thing. And even I, as a handbag buyer, experience level of 0, I thought that was a quality product. Now, where that relates to the capital structure of Markel is there are other companies in that industry who sometimes might have a short-term financial issue. They might have an interest bill to pay. They might be too levered. They may be running a little short right now. They may encounter an economic cycle through no fault of their own that puts them in a tough situation. And the temptation that they will face in that environment is actually, if they got to cut prices to move the goods, they'll do that because they have to. Because Brahmin is operated on the capital foundation of Markel, they're making a quality product. They're charging a fair price. If sales are going to be a little bit weak this quarter for things that are beyond their control, that's okay. The long-term interests of the business are protected by preserving the deal, the value, the brand for its customers. Customers know what they're getting what they're paid for, and that's just one of these subtle little loops that happen over and over and over again, all within the system of the Markel Group that compound for the benefit of the shareholders over time. Hope I didn't go too far. Zone 1.
Hi, I'm Alan Dillon. I'm from Yardley, Pennsylvania. More than 5 years ago, as an individual investor, I came across Markel Group as a value investment, and I invested in it. And this is my first annual meeting. And I listened to you this morning, and I came away enthused. And I come to this meeting this afternoon, and I come away encouraged. But I look at the return of my stock investment, and I have to tell you, I come away disappointed. Why should I stay invested in Markel for the next 5 years with consideration for its performance compared to S&P 500 or Berkshire Hathaway for the past 5 years?
Right.
That's number one. If I can, also I want to ask an insurance question. With the recent spate of wildfires, many residences have been destroyed, and people insure against that, and you take that into consideration, and you're trying to take it into consideration. What has recently come to light is that with the construction material of these homes, there becomes an environmental hazard on the lots of these homes that become a liability. Does Markel take that into consideration when they insure these properties?
I'll let Simon take the insurance piece first, and then I'll speak to the ownership idea.
It's an excellent point you raised. I mean, I did speak to wildfires earlier. I think wildfires are probably the single most destructive and heightened area of climate change, if you will, that are going to impact our book of business. So we are very, very cautious in places which are affected by wildfires. We had a few losses last year stemming from our fine art book of business, which is the paintings and so forth, which are in those homes. We honestly do not write many homes, either property or liability, in wildfire areas. So our underwriting decision on that is essentially to stay away from there. Where we did suffer losses was in the more specialty area of that fine art and some of the classic cars that were in the properties as well. So I'd agree with you. I don't know enough about the materials themselves sitting here on the stage, but I do know how difficult underwriting against wildfires, and we saw those losses in California last year. Sadly, I think there's more of that to come.
And let me speak to the total return. I've not checked the stock price today. Try not to look at it to the best of my ability on a day-to-day basis. I do know that as of the end of the year, and we talked about things in the terms of the 5-year buckets, as of the end of the year at 2025, the 5-year total return to a Markel shareholder was about, I think it was a little north of 15% a year. So that's a good return. I'll sign up for that for the rest of my life. We've given back some of that in the first part of 2026 on the account of the market reactions to our first quarter results, and market can make whatever judgment it wants. I can tell you that as active repurchasers of our own shares, we responded to the fact that the stock went down a little bit, so we buy a little bit more. So the way I would ultimately say what happens in the next 5 years or the next 50 years is it reminds me of a story a number of years ago. It was spring break, and my daughters had already gone off to college, and my son was the only one left at home. And we were driving off somewhere, and Susan was behind the wheel, and my son Jack was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back seat, and I had a canvas bag full of books and magazines and stuff to read, and it's kind of oftentimes the way it goes. So Susan was driving, I was in the back reading, and there was an analyst report that I was reading about Exxon. And Exxon at that point was very heavily repurchasing their shares. They've done more and less of that over time. But at that particular point, the analyst was making the point that at the current rate of share repurchases, Exxon was going to be down to 1 share. So at that point, my 15-year-old son, Jack, piped up and he says, "Wow, I own some Exxon." And I said, "Oh, your mother and I are going to squeeze you out in a very ugly family feud before we get down to that last share." But it didn't get down to that. Exxon's not down to 1 share. They're not going to. But the value of each share, and in the case of Markel, we have reduced our share count by 10% from its peak. As I said on the last conference call, we are likely to not take 5 years to get the next 10% in at the prices that it's trading at. So my hope for you is that you and I will both be shareholders 5 years from now, and we'll be coming back to this meeting with those 5-year buckets, and you and I will both be pleased and happy with the results that we've produced, and we'll eat a cheesesteak in Yardley, Pennsylvania, and we'll get an imitation thereof in Richmond and see one another in 5 years' time.
Tom, I mean, this is totally your area. One thing that I would say, if we look at some of our peer group, people that are value investor companies, look at Fairfax, for example, would be a good example of that. During the last 5 years, when we've been a shareholder, our underwriting performance has lagged the general marketplace. And that is a key factor in our share price. So I'm not saying it certainly is not all down to insurance, but we have to improve consistently that core part of our organization in order for everything else to fire in the way that it would do. Now, we can only put runs on the board at time, annoyingly, it's quarter after quarter after quarter. So the job now is just to put runs on the board consistently. And I think if we do that in the low 90s combined in this environment, I think the market will start to really feel that Markel's a great story, and all the rest of what we have will start to sing to the degree that it should do.
I agree.
No pressure.
Zone 2.
Hi there. My name is Thomas. I come from Antwerp, Belgium. I've been a proud Markel shareholder since a couple of years, as well as represent my firm, who've been long-term shareholders since 2008. Now, over the course of the past couple of months, we've seen the retirement of some great capital allocators such as Mark Leonard at Constellation Software, Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway, and we've also seen, at least in the short term, how the market reacts to this. Now, Tom, you played a big role so far in the success of Markel. I think I can speak for the rest of the group that we hope that you want and can continue as long as you would. But to what extent do you think there is key person risk at Markel, as well as when the time comes, how or what would you look for in a potential successor?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And also, I do want to thank you. I know your firm has been increasing their shareholdings over the last couple of quarters through the public disclosures, and I appreciate the conversations that Tyler and I have had with you and some of your colleagues about what you're looking for. And really, you're a delightful shareholder because your time horizons match ours. The idea of compounding and building multi-generational wealth is what we've talked about, and I appreciate you all as shareholders. I think one of the things we've tried to do through this day, through the annual meeting itself, through the panels that happened earlier, is to see the team that is on the field at Markel. We have a spectacular group of people who run all of our businesses, and we've had clearly examples of where there was somebody running a business, and for whatever reason, they're not there, the retirements, whatever happens, and there has been a next person up. And the next person up, and as Andrew talked about, as we've gone through some CEO successions in some of the ventures businesses, Simon stepping up from his proven wins that he produced in the international business. We just have a great fact pattern that I would hope would give you confidence that when there are gaps to be filled, we've got people on the team who've been practicing, learning, studying, being mentors, being proteges, both, and they answer the call when it comes up, and that is the design of the system. That's why we talk so much about the values and the way in which we do things, because that attracts people, and it attracts the kind of people who you want to pass the baton on to over time. Thank you. Tyler?
We got a lot of questions on AI, so I want to honor those from Brian Chilton, Mara Feldman, Dev Patel, Chris Townsend, and there was really two sides to that question. One was the potential disruption that could come from AI, and what does that mean about, particularly in the insurance business, the competitive advantages and how they may change or be preserved in the face of AI. And then the other side was the opportunity. So there was a lot of talk around what is its potential to improve underwriting precision and claims efficiencies and other things. So could you talk about AI from those two lenses?
Tyler, so we touched on it a little bit, but it's a good opportunity really to talk about AI in insurance. And I do think 12 months ago, I think I was a little bit on the fence as to whether or not this thing was going to be really interesting in our social lives, but not necessarily something that could impact the business materially. I didn't know what was going to happen there. I sit here today absolutely fundamentally believing that AI has a very significant role to play in both the industry and at Markel. And I think looking at that and knowing that, we and all of the colleagues that we've got around the insurance organization have to treat this thing as a massive opportunity for us to become a market leader utilizing AI across the business. I would say that on average, and I've said this before, our technology and operations has probably not been a standout facet of the Markel Insurance organization. We're okay. In certain pockets, we're very good. But on average, we've not been terrific at this area. AI gives us the chance to completely reimagine the way that our businesses are working. So before, it's very much back and forth with a broker over emails, and there's a lot of heavy work that goes into preparing us into a position where we can underwrite a risk, make a decision on it. And the information is often limited to what a broker chooses to give to us over the counter. This causes average times to respond to submissions. It can be as long as a day, 2 days, 3 days before we get back to a broker, if we get back to them at all. We're working on projects at the moment, Travis Pearson on the video alluded to this. We're working at projects at the moment that will give a broker a quote in his hand in less than 10 minutes after the submission has come across the table into Markel. And that's been caused by us essentially saying, let's just reimagine how that business can work and how that workflow does, and putting it into Anthropic and Claude, and actually have the data ingestion, the pricing tools, the forms be prepared for the underwriter to review. So AI, I think, in the general business, gives us the opportunity to leapfrog what were fairly arcane systems that were available for us to buy, and actually create systems and pieces of technology which are absolutely laser focused on the type of specialty insurance that we are currently trying to sell. So we could have 100 different instances of AI across Markel Insurance, and they may all decide to use Claude, some are using Harvey, as we'd heard before, but I'm very relaxed about the fact that we do things differently with these tools, so long as we do them within certain guardrails to know that we're safe. But we can now pull up these systems and these workflows in what would take normally 2 or 3 years. I've seen this change now happen within 4 weeks. We've just spun up something in 4 weeks, which is now out to market and making an incredible change in it. So it will disrupt the industry because some people are going to be faster than they've ever been before, and some people are not going to adopt AI in that particular way, and they are going to fall by the wayside very, very quickly. We are going to be one of the people that adopts this, and we will do it by looking at processes from an end-to-end basis. We're not going to tinker around the edges with AI just to make a bit of process better. We're going to do it across the whole process, from the submission of an insurance quote to the quote and bind, and then right through to the claims process as well. So it's right at the dead center of our business. We're investing a lot of time and effort, but you know what? The other good thing about this is it can be cheaper. So to put a massive industry-grade core system into an insurance organization, be that Guidewire or Duck Creek, that's likely to be hundreds of millions of dollars over a 3 to 5 year time period. With the software and the Claude that we're using at the moment, it's more like $3 to $5 million and a 2-month process to get that thing on the rails. So we can watch it, we can fail fast, or we can win quite quickly and then double down on the investments that we're making. So I do think it will disrupt the industry, or it will there will be some very significant winners and losers from this, and I'm absolutely obsessed with the fact that Markel is going to be on the winning side of that particular debate.
And Andrew,
yeah, I know the question was directed at insurance, but I feel compelled to talk about AI a little bit across the broader group, and I'll point it out on 3 dimensions. So a lot of times we talk about how it's transforming business and what's different and how do you reimagine what you do. You also read a lot of headlines about CapEx that goes into to creating the ability to harness the compute needed to drive AI. Well, good news is we're supplying some of that build out. So we've got precast concrete, industrial and specialty gas trailers, and cranes, and fire protection systems, all of which are going into the build out, which is a great tailwind for the businesses in our family supporting that. The additional good news is that's not all those businesses do. So we're indexed to it in that we're benefiting from it, but we're not over-indexed to it should it change direction. Point 1. Point 2, I have to make the inevitable commercial for CapTech. CapTech's been a part of our family now for what will be 11 years in December, so a little over 10 years. CapTech can be that river guide for many organizations, and in fact, those that were paying close attention in the AI video heard one of our Markel associates talk about CapTech as its partner in this AI journey. And so within our system, we have people that are more on the bleeding edge than maybe Tom or myself. Simon might be in front of us vibe coding at night. But CapTech actually does a wonderful job helping companies along this journey. That includes companies within our family and then dozens and dozens of companies outside of our family. So AI is an opportunity there. Lastly, within our businesses, and again, we have many, many businesses, their stories we could go on and consume the next couple of hours with them. I'll just give one example. So PartnerMD was highlighted earlier. At PartnerMD, all the teammates are great, but I'll tell you the practitioners, the doctors and the nurses' time is extremely valuable. Anybody who's been to a doctor or nurse always feels like they're overloaded. Our system's designed to reduce that load, but one area that existed before was the onboarding of a new patient. And the systems that were in place were manual. They occupied doctor and nurse time to input the data from the disparate patient records. There was opportunities for mistakes, and frankly, you just couldn't get the quality information and the speed to spend the time with the patient that you wanted. That team has developed a tool now which automates it, and they did so using AI. So now instead of doctors and nurses inputting data, AI is doing that from a document ingestion standpoint, which is one of the areas CapTech helps people along their journey. And the reality is our doctors and nurses, A, spend more time with their patients, and that's what people join PartnerMD for. And B, we lower the risk of burnout. Doctors in this country are burned out. And at the end of the day, like, one of the ways to use this technology is to give people the freedom to do what's most important, not some of the things that they had to do manually before. So many, many stories like that, but I don't want it to just be an insurance story. Across all of Markel Group, our decentralized structure, AI is an important conversation going on.
Zone 1.
My name is Ira Holtzman. I'm from the Chicago area. I became a shareholder 3 years ago after attending your brunch in Omaha. First a comment and then a question. I just looked up, the stock's about $18.60. If you're a long-term shareholder, as I'm planning on being and giving the stock to my kids, I'm happy when it goes down. It gives me an opportunity to buy more. My question is, in last year's annual report in your letter, you mentioned the intrinsic value, I believe was $2,600. And then this year, you didn't mention that. I thought I read something that said maybe $2,900. I was just curious why you didn't give an intrinsic value in this year's annual report.
Well, thank you. What we did last year was to lay out our methodology and how we would go about calculating that number. And as we said at the time, the most important thing is not the number itself, but being consistent in your methodology year after year after year after year, so you get directionally correct information about sort of what the rate of growth is. So while we didn't put the number this year, and it really won't be our practice to put a specific number there, we did allude to it, and we talked about the same methodology. And I believe, if memory serves, it's page 38 on the 10Q, where you can see exactly the methodology we use of 3-year averaging of the operating income from the non-insurance businesses and the value of the balance sheet with the investment security. So we like people to do their own math. You can maybe even ask ChatGPT or Claude, using the math that Markel lays out on page 38 in the 10Q, what would the number be? I try not to look at that. We just do it internally ourselves every single year to see the rate of travel. And I would add, we've been doing that for a number of years. And the correlation between what the intrinsic value calculation would be and the stock price over a long period of time is very high. Markets can be volatile, and any given day that those discounts or premiums can narrow or widen out. They travel on slightly different tracks in the short term. In the long run, and again, we're a long-run company, so we talk about the 5-year buckets, why we lay out the 21 years of data in the annual report. Those numbers travel together pretty tightly. Zone 2.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Dominic from London. We've been investors in the insurance space for 27 years, and I think we've owned Markel for most of that period. So this is my first time here at the reunion in person. I just want to thank the whole Markel team for putting on such a fantastic event, and thank you for welcoming us to your home. And my question is really a two-part question. Firstly, it's around the thinking about the decision to move State National and Nephila sort of away from the insurance division under Andrew's remit. Obviously, they have different dynamics from your core insurance businesses, but they are closely connected. So it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about the thinking around that decision and what the future looks like for both of those businesses. And then the second connected question is if you could just help us get a bit more of a sense about the practical connections between group companies and the insights between group companies. The AI video that Andrew just alluded to there provided some interesting comments around how group firms are using CapTech, but it'd just be helpful to flesh that out a little bit more. Obviously, you've got a fantastic portfolio of group companies in all parts of the economy that can help various different parts of your group be better. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let me take each of those questions in order. In terms of the State National and Nephila change in reporting requirements, when we When we asked Simon to take on the role that we asked him to take on in terms of the insurance businesses, that was a major lift and a major challenge, and we were very gracious that he was willing and able to do so. So we wanted to let him focus on that. Andrew, whose plate was already full, became overflowing and full, and he very graciously agreed to take on the responsibility for the State National and Nephila relationships. They are, you're correct, hybrid sort of businesses. So the insurance businesses typically are dominated by the balance sheet. And what happens in the balance sheet really tells the story of the business itself. And the income statement sort of falls out of the change in balance sheet from year to year. There's a whole psychology, a mentality, a way of doing things that just comes about naturally when you have a balance sheet oriented businesses. When you talk about Nephila and State National, they're not 100% income statement businesses, but they skew way more towards the income statement than the balance sheet. Andrew's remit and the companies he's been looking after for quite some time tend to be much more oriented towards the income statement than the balance sheet and the cash flows that they would produce. So that was one of the reasons just structurally for why the shift took place, and a fair amount of behavioral aspects to that. Over time, we'll continue to make sure they're looked after appropriately, and we'll be flexible and have some creativity about that over time. But that sort of explains that particular thing.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, I agree with Tom's comment. I think, State National is a rated carrier. It's a fronting business. I think it's important to note that and acknowledge it. That means it's not without risk. We understand that dynamic. Matt Freeman and his team are fantastic at how they've built an incredible contracting process, collateral process, technology systems to support that. But I do think you're right in making sure that we acknowledge that it is insurance related. Two things I'll add. One, Markel Group touches all businesses. It just so happens that when Markel Group and Markel Insurance are interacting, that's usually Simon and Tom. So it's not anomalistic for someone at Markel Group to have a connection with a business within our family. I think you're right as to, hey, should that be someone from insurance? And what I'd fill in there is whether it's my partner Brian down there, or Gunter Kreisen, or Nikki Lynn Marshall, or a handful of other folks. They're folks within Simon's organization that continue to support those businesses, supplement my understanding, help provide information. So there is a rigid reporting way in which we disclose, but the way that we serve is more complicated and more oriented to the needs of those businesses than just that rigid structure. And I just want to make sure that you've got that point, because Simon's got world-class people across his organization. They're always willing to lean in and bring their expertise to those businesses if and when appropriate.
Thank you. All right, I think last question perhaps, Tyler. We'll offer that to you.
All right, I'll go with this question from Christopher Grubb. He said, with the Buffett indicator and Shiller PE and other metrics at or close to all-time highs, demonstrating rich valuations, how has this impacted the way Markel allocates capital? And further, if there was a material downturn in markets or business, how would Markel be positioned to best take advantage of a prolonged recession? Thank you.
I'll take that. We don't really make top-down macroeconomic forecasts, so I don't disagree with the statement and those particular numbers, but that's not really what guides us. What we're guided by is specific. Specifically, do we see an attractive security? Specifically, do we see an attractive business? Specifically, do we see an attractive insurance acquisition possibility? Specifically, what does Markel stock sell for? And we're going to allocate capital to its highest and best use, to the best that we can figure out how to do that. That is what guides us, and that's what always guides us. So we don't have top-down forecasts. Should downturns happen, the great news is we have very low leverage. We have a very strong balance sheet. We have an array of diverse businesses that produce cash flow and have done so through thick and thin. And I don't know a better hand you could possibly have going into tough times or downturns than a pretty good balance sheet and an array of cash-producing businesses. So I think we're in good shape on that. Got one more question we'll recognize from Zone 2, and I think you're between the audience and beer, so ask whatever question you want.
Well, wow, incredible event. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Javed. I work in South Dakota and also co-founded a Value Vault Capital Management. And Tom, just want to say thank you. You've been mentor for 10 years. It's been great. And next, Andrew, I just want to give you a big hug for recognizing something from Partner MD, that physicians are burned out. It's under-recognized even at top-tier healthcare. And if you, as a senior management, recognizes that, it's going to be the best organization where you could serve the patient. My question today is based on Markel's 3 engines: insurance, investments, and Markel Ventures. As Markel Venture grows over time and internal cash flow starts to grow internally, Tom, how do you see the capital flow? Will it dwarf the insurance float eventually, and Ventures would be providing a lot more capital that you'll be deploying for further investments?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for the acknowledgement that the compassion with which we think about all of the associates of Markel Ventures, including the physicians that Andrew spoke of. The good news is wherever capital is generated, wherever cash is generated, wherever businesses produce profitability, we look around the entire organization, and we have skills at having bought insurance companies, having bought non-insurance companies, having bought publicly traded securities, and having bought our own stock, that we'll just look and opportunistically decide what do we think that incremental dollar should be invested in to produce the highest return, and that's what we've been doing since day one in a complete 360-degree view, and that is what we will continue to do. So thank you. With that, we'll call a break here. We'll turn up the lights. The music is underway. The food trucks are there. The beer is over there. We'll take about a 10-minute break. We'll come back to deal with the formalities of the AGM. But with that, thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you outside.